Scott with sjwellfire.com. Final Days Report, episode 141. We're calling this Divide and Control. It's no longer divide and conquer, it's divide and control with this mind control technology. No more free will, as Noah Harari has said. We're going to monitor you under your skin. This is iron mixed with clay, graphene oxide mixed in you, this fourth beast system that's rising, my friends. I talk about it often. But we're going to dive into Operation Crimson Mist with this Rwanda genocide that appears to have happened. This technology has been around for a while. But at the end of the day, we've proven SEAL 1 is open. Check that podcast out when we dive into the Greek and some of the words, what BO means, right? BO means toxin. And I think SEAL 1 is going to be a playbook many, many years, if we have many years. But the elite are telling us SEAL 2 is in play. Check out Beyonce riding this red horse. Man, this just looks like a bloody mess in Vogue magazine cover. So the elite will always tell you what is in play, my friends. But before we dive into Operation Crimson Mist, just a quick article. Go to sjwellfire.com and typed in the words banned video by telecom company, where I dive deep and show the video that really has been suppressed by the French doctor talking about this mind control technology that will be forced on you with a vaccine. So we're connecting some dots here. And then also I play a video of somebody from Syria talking about how they're fighting GMO soldiers. You cannot make this stuff up. And I also give a testimony of somebody that actually lived in Africa with a civil war. And he's told me flat out they were fighting these black-eyed zombies, these soulless zombies. It was crazy because I was like, who, what, when, where, why? Why was there a civil war? And he just told me we were fighting demonic entities, he was saying. But I think they were mind controlled, basically. So this has been happening for a very, very long time. But I'm not going to read this whole article about Operation Crimson Mist, but it is interesting, my friends. So this article, and again, do your own research, go to an alternative search engine and type in Operation Crimson Mist. It's pretty deep, where they did a lot of research on people. They set the scene up. Some leaders died mysteriously in a plane crash. And they had two different groups going against each other protesting, which sounds like what is happening today with Roe versus Wade. We actually talked about the psyop of the leak, where it's divide and conquer. Now it's divide and control, my friends. Well, let's read. What the Hercules crew had just achieved has been an open secret since the late 50s, when researchers accidentally discovered that there is a precise control brain wave for literally everything we do and for everything we feel. The problem back then was that each of these control brain waves, rage, fear, panic, lethargy, vomiting, and so on, had to be transmitted with accuracy taken out to 3 decimal places, or it simply did not work at all. But as the years rolled by, and this is in the 90s, and with the advent of transistors and microprocessors, the operational application of precise control brain waves became practical reality. It is important to note here that the lethal trick repeated hundreds of times by a C-130 Hercules in Rwanda during April-July 1994 was not classic mind control in the ultimate conspiracy meaning of the term, i.e., where people claim to hear complicated messages inside their heads, where it is feared that NASA or something similar intended to turn everyone into helpless zombies by implanting electronic chips in their arms and necks. What the C-130 crew were actually engaged in was electromagnetic augmentating a pre-existing state. So they got to get you jacked up and pissed off and ready to do wickedness. Remember that the agents and security service personnel first had to point the Hutu tribesmen in the direction of the Tutsis to induce reasonable anger and make sure that they were appropriately armed. Only then could the C-130 go to work with precise control brainwave of rage, augmenting and thus upgrading crowd behavior from that of angry demonstrators to uncontrollable genocidal maniacs. Although not classic, this was and is unquestionably mind control for a simple reason that external means were being used to force irresistible change in behavior. For those who really want to know how government or our agencies change public behavior on a whim, the explanation is not too complicated, though obtaining details of the classified control brain frequencies is all but impossible. Various academics have actually demonstrated some of these effects quasi-publicity over the years, which provides hard reality for skeptics. One of the leading lights in this field is Dr. Elizabeth Bice, who was a nuclear scientist and researcher at Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory and Stanford Research Institute, the professor of physics at John F. Kennedy University of California, research consultant of NASA and US Navy and a member of IEEE, APPS, and all these different acronyms. Elizabeth Bice identified specific frequencies, effects to induce nausea, happiness, and many other behavioral states decades ago. Clearly, this doctor is an enthusiast. Give me the money in 3 months, she boasts, and I'll be able to affect the behavior of 80% of the people in his town without their knowing it, make them happy, or at least they think they're happy or aggressive. Unlike the research in this field, Dr. Elizabeth Bice tends to be open about her work, has demonstrated the effects of many times in quasi-public forums, and claims the experiment only on fully informed people. Many years ago, during one of the memorable demonstrations in California, she turned a specific brainwave on all the students on the left side of the auditorium, whereupon their teeth started chattering collectively, uncontrollably. When the affected students on the right side of the auditorium suggested this might be some sort of trick, Elizabeth Bice calmly turned the specific brainwaves on them instead. The right side now suffered exactly the same fate, watched by the stunned, no longer affected students on the left side. Extra low frequencies. The main problem lies in the delivery of these brain waves to the target. Because they all lie in extremely low spectrum between 0.1 and 25 hertz, with all control brain waves in even narrow central band between 0.6 and 10.2 hertz, these are effectively the same earth frequencies, meaning that they are very hard to direct in conventional radio transmission. Remember that in order to be effective in the selective crowd behavior augmentation, you must be able to restrict delivery to clearly defined crowds in clearly defined areas. This is achieved by using extremely high frequency microwave beam, which is then amplified, modulated at exactly the same rate and desired controlled brainwave. This is much easier to explain with pictures, so make a good look at the diagram below. So for those of you listening, check out this podcast, Delivery Control Brainwaves by Modulating Microwave Beams. Microwaves in the 1.0 to 3.0 gigahertz range travel in perfectly straight lines like light, and they are easily to control in terms of direction, regardless of power output. In most cases, the microwaves are transmitted by a dish, aerial, or sort of frequency C-located low, tall television. Think 5G. These are designed to transfer high volume of electronic data between the television studio and transmitter and vice versa. Where the American mind controllers score their airborne or truck mounted equipment is by using microwave aerials that can be adjusted in exactly the same way and can be adjusted to focus variable beam flashlight. How this is done is shown in the second diagram to the right. So it's a beam of light like a flashlight. In Rwandan Hutu tribesman example shown near the start of this report, the crew of the C-130 Hercules only needed to know the width of the target on the ground and the width of their microwave beam at any given true altitude in feet, as read directly by the radar altimeter. With those two values available, it is then a simple matter to adjust the beam to accurately bracket the target crowd and altitude chosen. But this equipment is not just developed in large lumbering Hercules transport planes. During recent weeks, European security experts have concluded that smaller versions of Crimson Mist were recently deployed in the street of Baghdad, designed in part to augment the media propaganda line that Iraqi citizens are dangerous savages, all badly in needed of direct supervision by democratic American authorities. One classic example of this is the looting of Baghdad Museum, apparently by a crowd of undisciplined rabble, but the video footage tells a different story. To pull off this stunt, American authorities needed to assemble a crowd, managed quite easily, and promise free food, and then they needed to place the crowd outside the museum, which again was easily done because they located the free food outside the museum itself. Next, the attention of the crowd had to be drawn to the museum itself, which was achieved in a spectacular fashion by firing the 220 millimeter shells from an Abrams tank gun straight through the doors. I mean, it's interesting. It is interesting, my friends. Dive deep into this on this mind control technology. And I just go back to their words, Noah Harari, free will is dead. What are they telling us? And then again, check out, is the COVID-19 the mark of the beast? We go into this mind control technology, my friends. And that video we did, iron mixed with clay, graphene oxide mixed in you. It's a mind control war, my friends, and they're just setting us up with Roe versus Wade, with black versus white. The only divide and conquer is Christians against the world, giving them the gospel. But at the end of the day, I would not get involved in major protests since this technology appears to be available, my friends. And you can just see the headlines, even soft headlines. A lot of places are getting burned down. Here's an article: Christian Pregnancy Center in Colorado vandalized and burned following Roe versus Wade. This is getting violent, my friends. A growing number of, and then the media is just pumping this up. I've been watching the media. I can't handle it. It's all one-sided. A growing number of women give birth at Catholic hospitals where they do not receive the same reproductive health options, including birth control, provided at other hospitals. I mean, it is just a war on people with values, my friends. And I've even seen Christians throw out scripture supporting abortion. It is wicked. It's absolutely wicked. So let's read Luke 144 about John jumping up and leaping for joy. For lo, as soon as the voice of thy salutation sounded in my ears, the babe leaped in the womb for joy. I mean, good night. And then Jeremiah 1:5 is classic. Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. And before thou camest forth out of the womb, I sanctified thee. And I ordained thee a prophet unto the nations. I mean, just come on. But going back to the Club of Rome plan to make humans the disease, and this global warming scam is such a multifaceted strategy. We did the podcast COP26 about taxing, this carbon taxing. And sure enough, they're rolling it out. They're rolling out this carbon tax. They're going to make it where nobody can afford meat. No one can afford to produce meat. We need to buy livestock and just start raising it ourselves, butchering it ourselves. NPR headline: New Zealand announces world's first plan to tax cow and sheep burps. Give me a break. This is insanity. It's a war on God's creation. 2 podcasts you got to check out: Why the Elite War on Meat. There are a lot of health benefits, especially if the meat's grazing. There's wealth in meat. And then you'll eat 3D printed meat and fish, and you're going to like it, my friends. You'll own nothing and like it. This is just Satan's time. He wants to be omnipresent, my friends. But going back to this divide and control and this Operation Crimson Mist, and again, you follow this channel and other channels, we just talk about this mind control zombie state. Even Amazon, in their terms of service, that podcast we did talking about zombie apocalypse, they could actually declare a force majeure where they don't have to deliver upon their contracts. Folks, they're telling us what they're doing. So my advice, if there are major protests, and think about 5G with the technology being rolled out, this mind control technology, and the technology is deep to adding, erasing, planting memories. DNA is a great memory storer. Personally, I would not get involved in it. I'd pray against it. I'd pray against it. And you better, if you're involved in really speaking out against this with a church or a facility that helps women to actually deliver the baby, it's obvious. Be on guard, my friends. But this is a time of divide and conquer, my friends. I think we need to soften us up before we get invaded. And again, Deagle report says 200 million Americans need to die by 2025. This is their playbook. So Scott with SJ Wellfire, thank you for your support. They're priming SEAL 2, the Red Horse, lawlessness, divide and conquer. Now is divide and control, iron mixed with clay, graphene oxide mixed in you, graphene, iron mixed in you, clay. But again, thank you for your support. Sign up for a newsletter, sjwellfire.com.